Hey everyone, back at the bench again, this time with three near identical chassis. For what you see here in front of us is the Roman's MPP. There's a third hilt off to the side here. It is exactly just like this one. Just obviously no room on the camera to fit all three of them at the same time. So we'll go through the hilts and then we'll go through the chassis. First one up is the Rogue One variant. We have the wires added to the ports, as you can see. This is sporting one of the Dagobah Swamp MPP blade holders. So if we look down in there, there's the blade plug, which if you undo the bulb release screw, will fall right out. And this is spring loaded. And then you have full reveal down through into the hilt itself. The grips were all hand cut so that they are slightly off in terms of lengths, little bits, similar to how it would have been done in the prop shops for the movies. The grips also have screws added to them, just like Rogue One. And again, as you can see with these two, they are slightly off in order to be able to give that, non-symmetric, pristine look, kind of idealized, so more closer to what would be a hand job. It is sporting a Woonwonga shroud that has been painted and slightly distressed or weathered along the edges. A couple other places has the brass thumb screw, as was seen in Rogue One. And this currently is empty because all the chassis are off to the side, but I'll show the pommel inside, as some slight modifications were made to it during the installs. I'll show this in a second. So the insert that usually would have been used as a thread-on adapter for the actual flash unit to be able to be mounted to a stand, those kinds of things, has been trimmed down to be very, very close to the bottom of the pommel. And that is to prevent the chassis from actually getting any damage in case you drop the hilt, those kinds of things. This would have previously pressed up against the speaker pod, and if you drop it the wrong way and it hits on that end, it will drive that nub from in here up into the speaker pod and either potentially ruin your speaker or at least knock it loose and cause some damage, which the way these are built, you'll see in a moment, requires a full rebuild to replace that little bit of plastic that might break because of the pommel insert. This is what I'm using in place of the pommel nub. And it's kind of a custom printed. You'll see kind of the ridges that cut down there. This fits snug against the bottom of the chassis once you put the chassis in, and then the pommel will actually screw down onto it, hold everything tight in place. And it's kept thin and away from the actual output of the speaker to ensure that the speaker can actually sound through the hole in the pommel. So that's the Rogue One hilt. This is basically considered a V2 idealized. Most people see this as the bent nail hilt, and really the only difference between bent nail and this idealized is that instead of the bent nail with the lever on the nail itself, we have the actual lever in its full original form. So that keeps that one again a little more idealized. The grips were pre-installed by Roman when the kit was ordered, and this is a Roman shroud, again with the Dagobah Swamp blade holder. So same thing on the insert here in the pommel. I've cut down the original nub and then included another one of these spacer rings. That is the two hilts. And now we will bring in what most of you have probably come to see. The three chassis. All very similar, but yet still very different in between each other. The configurations I'll run through from this one, as it was requested to have a couple of extra blade styles on it by the customer. So we'll use this one last. So I guess I'll start at the top then. And in this case, this is the Goth 3D. All three, of course, are the Goth 3D Sith Lord chassis. This one is a little bit special because of the tip up here for the chassis. It is one of the limited edition Dagobah Swamp brass versions of the tip. Usually you get this black anodized aluminum version, and when you order the normal blade holder kits, this one was brass. It is an accessory piece. To me, with the rest of the brass chassis, definitely comes through very, very nicely and completes the look from top to bottom. We'll get a zoom in a little bit here. And there it is. It's focused. Real quartz in the chamber, 2 crystals that have been cut. Stainless steel pipes and tubes to match the look of the rhodium chamber parts from Goth. And then, of course, standard Shapeways black plastics that kind of go in throughout. There is some mesh covering what I refer to as the gills. Here, there is also in the speaker pod. Oh, and the other stainless steel tubes will go up there. Board access will show on the third chassis overall. Oh, and they do all have OLED screens. All 3 of these were done with, I believe they were all blues. So this one, very close to the one that we just looked at. We have a brass lower, we have brass in the board cover, we have steel doors, and this one was chosen as a gold-plated, I believe, gold-plated brass print. Then we have the standard aluminum black anodized chassis tip. And this was originally painted by another installer with a copper kind of color. Really, really looks good, I think. Even when it was out on the bench disassembled, it looked great. This one came to me as a repair from mailing damage, which is the exact mailing damage I was talking about. If you drop it, you will jam that nub up through here and potentially drive this up into the speaker. There's also a pixel sits behind this little circle, and that pixel can also further either damage the speaker, or you can damage the wiring for it, which could then cause a short across the accents. And depending on how it's wired, those accents can affect potentially the entire thing from the OLED screen down through the speaker. So this one also sporting 2 real quartz crystals. Piping on this one was left a little bit on the weathered side, so I didn't polish them out, but these were all brass rods here, and then some brass tubes here, and then inside in the middle. And again, on this one, the customer did choose to go with rhodium plated chamber parts. Oh, and I should say all 3 do sport the stock NPXL version 3 short pin hilt connectors. And they all do have doors that open, and that's your 18650. Positive side here, negative side up on this end. And usually when I put these down with the battery up, they roll over on me, but since that one wants to behave today, we'll leave it there so you can see both sides at once. This is what I'm referring to as the tactical edition. It is an all black plastic in terms of the bodies. The chamber parts here, and in there were done in brass, and all of the piping and tubes were done with brass also. There is a little bit, you'll see the difference between the brass chamber piece here and this part, as well as over here. Those were touched up with some gold rub and buff in order to kind of help blend them into the chamber itself, as those are part of the actual black plastic bodies that come from Goth himself. So to kind of blend it in, make it fit with the chamber, I did touch those up just to make them make a complete look here. And again, brass brought up through here and here, as well as in the speaker chamber. The board cover on this one also sports some brass inside the covers here on the other side and then down the middle. And that's kind of to just help diffuse the light, give it a little bit of a different look from each of the other hilts. We'll lay that aside for a second. This is board access. It is the same on all three. Lift the cover, remove it. I do recommend turning the battery off, like the kill switch on the bottom, whenever you are taking on or off the board cover. There are contacts here that if you happen to slip or move it the wrong way, you could technically short it out on the two metal hilts. Obviously on this one, there's a lot less of a chance of that, but still recommend when going to access the board, turn the battery off before removing or adding the cover. So other than that, we will go through some quick demo of the configuration. And I did say that this one is the one I was going to use because it has some extra blade styles. The customer requested two of the grayscale fonts, and you'll see their names come up on the OLED as we go through. Other than that, the first 4 fonts we're going to see are the same across all 3 of these hilts. So the kill switch is down here. We'll flick it on.
Give yourself to the dark side.
It's a custom boot image that I've created myself. And then this was a previously available OLED image. I've taken it and added to it and modified it for additional purposes, and you'll see those as we go along during different events for things that the saber is doing, whether it's active, idle, those kinds of things. Clash, lockup, and blaster bolts. The animations here will change according to the activity on the saber. So you'll see this bar that's almost full, as well as the flickering bars on the bottom part do change as we go through. You'll see here, this is why I refer to these as the gills. And the gills are lit. There is 5 20/20 pixels on each side. There's 15 20/20 pixels going around the bottom of the chamber. Individual pixels on each end of the bottoms of each crystal. Here is that pixel that I told you about that sits and reflects against the speaker. And then up here, I've added 2 pixels this way that point down. In the original Goth configuration, there are 5 3mm LEDs that go in there. But being 3mm LEDs are single color and provide less ability to, say, animate and stylize kind of the hilt, I put in some dummy LEDs across here to help diffuse the light into the area, and then backlit them with 2 50/50 pixels. So that's kind of the overview of the electronics. A Profi 2.2, of course. And we will go ahead and light this one up. And that's where you can start to see down here, that lights up. We've got a pretty good flickering coming through the gills. The speaker chamber has a blue and green with flickering. And the speaker pod has some blinking red. And of course, being Vader, these first 4 are all going to have a red blade. They're all slightly different between audio flickers, hump flickers, kind of the Canon rotoscope type styles that you'll see on the FET library. So we'll move over, and it is a 1-button config, so hold and release. You'll see we're now on an ESP. Chamber's now got a blue with a light white flicker in it. Speaker has gone to some green. And the gills also have a small pulsing red. And the top end is actually off currently. Now you can see the red lighting up down here. The gills have gone solid. And we'll show you some of those LED animations. So if I do, you'll see the top bar is no longer as big. Blaster block. The top bar moves a little bit, but the bottom small bars definitely jump downwards. See if I can get a clash here without actually dropping the hilt. And again, you see those small bars drop down, and then we'll try and do a lockup. The small bars go way down, the overall power level goes down to a lot lower. Power off, and it goes back to its idle state where everything is mostly full. Then we'll go to our next font. Rogue One. And in this case, your gills are dark, as well as the battery cover, the board cover. Until we light everything up, and you see kind of the power flow comes up and everything lights out. We have a blue with purple and an icy blue kind of coloring going through below the chamber. It's kind of the power as it feeds through the crystals. Return of the Jedi. And you can definitely see that pixel lighting up my hand. Lighting up kind of a white to a silver white. And again, this one starts with the upper half dark. And then lights up. This one's actually more of an orange. I'm not sure if the camera will really cover that perfectly, but it's got kind of an orange color. And then more of a reddish orange up here, as well as the blade. Crystals all have different animations across the different styles. This is the first grayscale font. This one is only on this actual hilt itself. The owner asked for an orange blade, so I've tried to carry some of that orange through. You can see up here, the orange is kind of flickering and blinking like the blade getting ready to ignite. The side, it looks more like a blue and a standby. When you light it up, so you saw it flowing up through. This becomes brighter, flickers more, and obviously the blade comes out. And the secondary grayscale font is Sith. Again, the owner actually asked for purple on this blade style, so I've carried the purple through the whole upper section and into the blade itself. Have a lot of flicker on the crystals on this one. And that is the config for this saber. As mentioned, the first two do have the same config, minus those two grayscale fonts, which the customer for the tactical edition requested. If you got any questions, by all means, hit me up through my page, 5280 Concepts on Facebook, and we shall see you in the next video. Back again for a Steve Jobs moment. One more thing. Forgot to show how this actually inserts into the hilt itself. And I think, yeah, this is the Rogue One, so I will use the brass chassis on this one. On some MPPs, and I believe on only one out of the three of these, this screw is actually long enough to pinch against the edge, this edge of the blade holder's chassis tip, of the chassis tip on the chassis, and helps hold it towards the blade holder itself. So I do recommend, just for safety's sake and to keep things from scratching things up. You loosen that off about a turn, turn and a half, and you'll see that it gives you a little gap underneath. Yeah, there you go. You can see that on the camera. Once that gap is there, take your chassis. You can line up the button with the control panel, and then if you follow the button down, there is this line right here on the speaker end, and that kind of lines up for the most part with the button itself. So you take it and you slide it in, and in this case, this hilt, this grip lines up close, but not exactly, with the actual control box buttons. So we will kind of get my aim off a little bit apparently. And you don't want to jam this in because you will force this button cover into a chunk of the blade holder up here, and you could push the button off or damage it. And another way to look with the blade plug out, you can look down in here, and obviously on camera this is kind of dark. There we go, look. That's a better view. So you can actually do that, and right now that slid right in because I was able to line it up as soon as I saw it. So once that's in, take the spacer that I showed earlier. The lowest edge goes this way, and you just kind of set it that way, and then screw the pommel down.